This is Shell at Northfield Instruments, and we're going to do a demonstration of how to replace one of our cast tailpieces on any of your Northfield instruments. Primarily these days they're on our F5S models, but some of the earlier Northfields do also have the cast ones. So if you'd like to replace it, this is going to be a video on how to do it. So here is the new Northfield Gilchrist tailpiece that we're going to use to replace the cast tailpiece. One of the nice things about it is that you shouldn't have to re-drill any of the holes. They should line up perfectly, both screw holes and the end pin hole. But some of the nice features about this new tailpiece, it has this nice flip top here. The strings will be located on these little posts, and you have the felt to mute them. This is much easier to install your strings as opposed to where they used to be. And then in the end, it has a nice little latch to pull everything down tight. So let's go ahead and get started on swapping it out. You don't need many tools for this job, but some that you do need are critical. And you're going to need a little bit of leather to help protect the instrument. I like to use these diagonal cutters to help me take out the end pin. I use a little piece of cardboard or any thick paper here to protect the top from the strings. I have several screwdrivers that are going to be used for removing the screws. And then I also use some tape to also help protect it. The instrument and mark where the bridge is going to go. We're going to remove the strings first, but there's a few steps that will help keep any damage from happening to your instrument. I like to use a little piece of cardboard or some kind of thick paper, and I put those under the strings. I also use painter's tape, and I'm going to use that to mark the bridge, but it's very important that you kind of kill some of the stickiness to it. So I just kind of put it on my Northfield apron. And then I'm going to butt this up to the back edge of the bridge carefully. Okay, and I'll do it on both sides. Okay. All right. So the bridge is located. I have a place to butt the bridge back up to, and I'm putting it back. Okay. Now we're going to detune this, and I'm going to really slack these strings quite a bit. Okay, so the strings are pretty loose here. I use the diagonal cutters to cut these strings, and the reason why I have this paper here is to protect the string ends from scratching the top. But it's also very important that you hold the bridge a little bit there, because you don't want that to flop either. That can ding the top too. So as I get down to the last few strings, I'm going to also try and hold on to the bridge. Okay, here we go. Okay. And I can carefully take the bridge off, set it aside, and these remaining ends, having this paper here, won't scratch the top there. Now we're ready. All right, the next step is going to be to remove the end pin, and I take some leather and I use my diagonal cutters. One thing to remember, at Northfield, we don't glue these in. They are a tapered, very snug pressed in fit, so they should come out with a little bit of ease, but I use these diagonal cutters just to kind of carefully pry it out. And I use my leather again here. I'm going to put the leather here under the tailpiece, so as I unscrew it, it doesn't fall down and ding the top. Another important thing that I try and also do, just as an extra precaution, I use this tape again, and I'll put a little bit either side of the tailpiece. This is to protect, just in case your screwdriver slips. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the screws here. Through the years, there have been different screws. Some are Phillips and some are a regular flat blade. And it's off. So now the next step is just to to verify, to check that the holes are truly all in the right spot. And I'm lucky these are. And some of the very early models that had the cast tailpiece, the screws can be a little shorter than the newer Gilchrist design screws, as you can see there. The diameter of the hole is still the same, but the length is just a little bit more. So you may have to drill a slightly deeper hole. The bit that you're going to use is a 3/32 bit, drill bit. And what I do to get my length is I use a little piece of tape and I just try and find the length of how deep the screw is going to drill. And I make a little flag, sort of a depth stop. Okay, so now we can move on to go ahead and put this tailpiece on. So we're going to go ahead and get one screw in first. If I use a regular flat blade screwdriver, I kind of have my fingers to sort of help cradle it. Start that guy up. Okay, there's that. So now it's on. And the last thing is to put the end pin in place, and the hole again should line up. Sometimes when you're installing this new tailpiece here, you may find that the end pin is a little bit loose. It's really important that it's a very tight fit so that your strap doesn't pull it out. If it feels like it's a little bit loose, I have an easy solution to try and tighten things up. I'm just going to use a little bit of thin super glue and put it on a Q-tip here, and I kind of get it nice and wet. I'm just brushing it on. It's a nice thin coat, thin even coat. I'm just trying to make it a little bit thicker. I'm not going to glue it in, but I'm just making this a little bit thicker, and we'll put a little bit. This is accelerator, super glue accelerator, to speed up the process. Okay, and we want to make sure that's thoroughly dry, so I even kind of just run my fingers around it just to check so that I'm not sticking to it. And I seem to be pretty dry. It's not sticking to me. Okay, so now it's a little bit more snug. You can see it's stopping just outside of the tailpiece there, about a 32nd or so. And then I'll use my little hammer here and just give it some gentle taps to seat it. And now it's nice and tight. So now we're ready to start the restringing process. You can string these one of two ways for the high E string. You can just start here, or the older tailpieces usually had those nubs for these high strings. And it had to do with how they were wound. Older strings were oftentimes wound by hand, and this was an extra feature to help secure them. So we're going to go ahead and use those for this video. Always come from the inside. All right. And if you'll notice, I'll give my fingers, I'm pulling it tight. I'm going to give my fingers 3 fingers of excess there. That's going to be the wrap around the post. And I start my wind. Some string winders are made for guitar restringing, and they can mar the side if you're not careful. They can turn into the side. So on these instruments that are very nice, especially the ones that have this curve, I tend to use my hands just to bring it up to pitch. And I'll get it, it's a little almost there now. And we're going to set this down. And we're going to start to put the bridge in place. I have enough slack that I can get the bridge, start to put it in place there and just kind of hold it loosely in place. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and put the G string on to kind of even out the tension here. 2 fingers of excess, and I'll start my wind. And like I said, the first line is on top of the string. All right. And the second wind is below the string as it comes out of the post. So now I've got the strings on, but I don't really have a lot of tension on them. So we need to still kind of adjust the bridge to center it on the fingerboard as well as get it in position with the tape again. So I usually maybe go for just the very inside string. So we'll get this A string and we'll lock this down so we don't hear that annoying rattle. So we got a little tension on the A string, put a little tension on the D string. Okay, okay. So I'm just shifting the bridge here so that it's got even exposure on both sides of the fingerboard. And then I'm also going to bring it back so that it touches my tape. So we're in the right location. All right. And then I'll go ahead and I like to work from the inside. The reason I work from the inside out is to keep it from shifting on me. And that still looks pretty good. So now moving to the E string. Okay, so I'm pretty close to pitch here, and I'm still lined up with my tape. My edge of my bridge, back edge of my bridge is touching my tape, and I'm still nice and even on the sides of the fingerboard. And the back edge of my bridge is touching my tape, so I'm going to go ahead and remove my tape now, carefully. Okay. All right, and I can clip these loose ends. I'm just going to give them a little tug. All right, and I can clip them close to the post. One other important thing to check after you've got everything up to tension, sometimes the bridge wants to tip a little forward. So you should check along the back edge of the bridge there. This one looks pretty good. If it feels, or if it looks like it's not making good contact and maybe tipping forward, you may have to detune everything slightly to give you enough slack to be able to pull the bridge and make it sit down properly. And then you can slowly tune it back up again.